Hey, I'm Tommy Ellison, and this is Senior Moments. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember every detail of that time I came this close to being suspended my senior year in high school, just 3 weeks before graduation. So stick around. This is proof that some things from a misspent youth just don't fade away. Let's go. Well, hey guys, and it's Tommy Ellison here, and welcome to Senior Moments, Evidence of a Misspent Youth, and we are live at 5. And I don't know about you, but it's been kind of a rainy, dreary day here in Birmingham, and I had an opportunity to look at a few Christmas decorations as my spouse was hanging them, and that's always the easy way to do things, I guess. But today is kind of a special podcast because I have a special guest that's going to come on camera with us. Back when this guy and I were friends in high school, and ever since then, we didn't call them besties or BFFs. We just called each other brothers and friends. And I'm tickled to death to have him with me. He still lives here in Alabama, up on. He can tell you the name of the lake when he comes on. But if you would, we'll welcome Danny Evans to the program today. And Danny, I'm going to bring you back on camera here, and there you are. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom. Appreciate you having me on today.
Well, this conversation about coming together and doing this podcast today was somewhat, let's just say Danny sent me a text yesterday and was prodding my memory about something that happened over 50 years ago. And the whole premise behind this podcast is that I can remember things from 50 years ago. I just don't know where my car keys are now. So I don't know about you, Danny, but my spouse was telling me she was going to get me what was known as a senior GPS. It tells you not only how to get to where you're going, it also reminds you of why you were going to begin with. And I have been needing one of those for quite a while. So anyway, this episode, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, in our age grouping that we have of our peer friends, we're all experiencing this. What I have noticed, we're all experiencing the same symptoms.
That is
when
true.
It comes to memory.
And I read a magazine article the other day. It said if you think you have dementia, you don't, because you don't really realize you have it. But unfortunately, I can't remember where I read that. I would like to read it again, but I think it's in a dentist office, if I'm not mistaken. But
Probably.
If this podcast today has a theme, it's probably going to be the one that we talked about last night, and that was remembering Red Man. And for those of you who don't remember Coach Harold Lutz, he was our head coach at Fairfield High School for a number of years, and I don't know that he actually liked the phrase Red Man as it referred to him, but I guess those of us who were brave enough to say it in his presence probably had to take a lap. But nevertheless, this is the theme for today's lesson. And Danny, just to kind of set this up, a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, I don't know how many people remember this, but Coach Lutz played for the University of Alabama. You were aware of that, right? I know.
Yeah, I think he played for Coach Red Drew.
Okay. And he still, if you look in the media guide at the university, he still holds the record for the most point after touchdowns. I guess they call them PATs now. He kicked 11 in one game at Delta State versus Delta State on September 21st, 1951, which ironically is my birthday, the day I was born. So I'm not saying I take credit for what he did, but it is a friendly reminder. If you are looking for gifts, September 21st is the day that you want to keep in mind. So will you do that, Danny? Keep my birthday in mind. So
I'm keeping that back in the back files in my head.
one of the neat things about doing the podcast is sometimes you get live comments, and we have a classmate that has just come on, Donna Hardy Troncalli, just came on and said, "Hey friends,
Great to see.
Great to see you." So thank you, Donna. Appreciate you watching today. The other thing I was going to bring up, Danny, and just you got to remember I've been doing this by myself, so you're going to have to interrupt me and say what you need to say, or if you want to hold up a sign or something, you can always tell me to shut up so that you can chat. Will you do that for me?
Keep going.
All right. Well, probably one of the first times that Danny and I came to know one another was through football. He grew up in the Central Park area, and I grew up there in the heart of Fairfield, just off of Valley Avenue, or is it Valley Road? I get them confused now.
Valley Road.
Valley Road was
Valley
in Fairfield.
Road.
Yeah, Valley Avenue was, I think, Homewood, and we as we were getting ready to start football seasons, we did a lot of running and running and running. And one of the real joys of playing for Coach Lutz was, there was a time frame before the season actually started during the late summer where you were going through a conditioning process, but the coaches were not supposed to oversee your activities. So it was kind of a self-guided mission to get in shape and run in the park. And for those of you who played, you know what I'm talking about. And we would run, and Danny and I spent a lot of time together running, and typically
in the back.
At the end of the line, if I recall. And I guess something that I've always kind of teased Danny about was, as we were running, we both of us were about to die, because I don't even know who was keeping score on the laps that we were running. Do you remember that?
I think individually you sort of did that. We were running in those football cleats.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if you know Phil Lazenby.
But the thing that really bothered me, I see his name pop up from Sanford. The thing that bothered me when we exercised, besides you and I not going to make it, was how Steve Stewart would come out. He would probably lap us 2 or 3 times during an exercise, and I could never figure out how he could do that.
I think he was cheating. I think he was cutting across halfway and looping back around.
Yeah.
But
But he was a wide receiver. So.
Yeah. And then were you in the group? This would have been my sophomore year. You played on the sophomore team, right? Yeah, because we're going to be talking about that later. We went to what they called football camp up in Aniana, and we ran up there on what they called the Nature Trail, which was a little camp owned by Fairfield First Baptist Church. It was up on top of a hill, and the practice field was right on the lake there, and we had to run up and down that trail going. They called it the Nature Trail. It's actually the trail of death for many of us, because we were dying after practice and had to run up it. You remember that, Danny?
See, some reason I missed that. I don't know what happened. I played junior high ball, and I just remember going to the park and running, but I never I don't know what happened on the deal with up in Aniana that y'all were involved with.
Well, you didn't miss anything. I,
Yeah.
you, I have a vivid memory of a lot of that and there was a big mess hall, and Coach Cannon had a cot down on one end. He actually slept out there and kind of kept an eye on all of us. And I don't know where all the other coaches were. They may have been in another cabin somewhere. But sometime during that week that we were there, somebody put a folding metal chair underneath Coach Cannon's mattress, and he never realized it. And he kept complaining about his back hurting, and we would just kind of smile. Uh, but and it's funny to me how music can be a soundtrack of your life. There was a song that was real popular on our little AM radios that we played, while we weren't on the field practicing, and it was the Animals, and it was "We Gotta Get Out of This Place" was the name of it. We gotta get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do. You remember that song?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Anyway, it was
Well,
an advent.
yeah, I was sitting here thinking, Tommy, they probably wondering what the text I sent you yesterday, what brought this conversation on, because it was such a memorable moment in both our lives that you and I have never, ever forgotten that moment. And I was telling Tommy, I live up here in the country in St. Clair County. We have an Asheville, Alabama mailing address. But the way we go to the beach in the south now is we ride a mostly 2 lane road, and it takes us through Sylacauga. Our sophomore year, we played Sylacauga. And when I drove through the town, I saw their stadium, and it looked just like what I remembered from what would that have been, Tommy, 1966,
It would have been
that we were
the
there.
fall of 66, 67, 68. Yeah, and it would have been the senior class of 67, but it was the fall of 66 when we were playing there. Yeah.
Playing there, yeah. And each time going and coming, and I go by that stadium, that memory comes, flooding back, and I kept saying, I'm going to call or text Tommy about that, and just, tell him the memory that it brought back to me. And so that's what started the conversation. And I'll let Tommy get started on what was going on that led us to that unique event.
Well, uh, I guess I'm not sure the best way to get into this. We were a team. We were sophomores, and we were coming into the high school with a group of juniors and seniors who, the year previous to us getting there, won the dental clinic game and were touted to be very good. A guy named Doug Calhoun was a running back who went to Georgia Tech on scholarship. But there were a lot of great players on that team. But for some reason, we lost the mental uh, issues of playing as a team, and I can recall that the seniors were just kind of full of themselves, to pull it honestly. And if they're listening or would be watching, they can agree or disagree. But we opened the season with John Carroll. Pat Sullivan was a junior and a quarterback at Carroll, and he ran up and down the field all night, and literally we died 1,000 deaths. I can remember I didn't play any on that game. Didn't play much that year, honestly, but I can remember standing on the sidelines watching him go by, running sprint out left and sprint out right, and they beat us like a drum. And unfortunately, the next 6 teams that played also beat us like a drum. And when we went to our Sylacauga to play, we were 0-6.
Mhm.
0-6, no wins, 6 losses. And we got to
Which I
sell.
think was a first for Coach Lutz.
Yes, absolutely. He had
Yeah.
never coached a losing season at Fairfield, to my knowledge. Somebody can correct me if I'm not right about that. But he, um, halftime, we're behind, and we come into this little tiny visitors locker room, which looked like it hadn't been opened up and used in 30 years. It was dirty, and there weren't any benches. We were all sitting on the floor. And the funny thing I remember about it was, um, never ever. And of course, we were halfway, 3/4 of a way into our first high school season. So I don't know if it happened in other situations or not, but we had never seen anybody put like Cokes or even water for that matter in the visitors' locker room. And when we walked into the Sylacauga visitors' locker room, we saw these Coca-Colas in the big, the glass bottles, the little bitty glass bottles, and they were on a table, and there was like, I don't know, 35 or 40 of them. All of them had the caps off, and they were nice enough to leave them there for us, I guess, for us to refresh ourselves during halftime. And we certainly needed refreshing because we were again losing the game at that point. And Coach Lutz, you want to finish the story? You want me to?
I'll cue in some. You can correct me about any points I missed. But when we came in, uh, we were losing, I think, 21-0, if I'm not mistaken. And as we came in, Tommy, I didn't remember the coach doing this, but you said Coach Lutz just wiped those Cokes off the table.
You didn't remember that? I mean, some
No,
of
I
us
didn't.
had to dodge them.
I was in.
A few of them broke. Uh, I asked my friend at Chat GPT to relive the play, and it looked something like that. We were wearing those
Yeah,
darn purple
yeah.
jerseys that we typically lost when we played wearing them. They were hot, the gold pants, and
Heavy.
Coach
Yeah.
rakes them off the table, and you finish the story, Danny. What did he say?
And when he got through doing it, yeah, well, what I remember of it is he stood up there and he said, Fairfield is going to the dogs. You guys just don't give a damn.
Yeah,
Well, for Tommy and I, hearing the curse word was a shock. We had never ever heard him say that, and you didn't hear the football practice from anybody.
yeah,
And we just went, wow. And he said, somebody came in here saying, we may not play good, but we sure look good in our uniforms.
yeah,
And that's what set him off.
yeah. I'm not going to call the name, but I can remember who it was because he turned around after he had raked all the cokes on the floor and looked at him right between the eyes and said, "And did I not hear you say that we may not play good, but we look good?" And the guy that said it just bowed his head and said, "Man, I wish I could leave." you know, it was a bad situation. And of course, we were sophomores. We were sitting there, like babies, not so much physically, but mentally, I guess, watching this go down and thinking, "Wow, uh, Coach Lutz is really mad." And like you say, Danny, I never heard him say a profane word before that, and I'm not even sure I've ever heard him say a profane word anytime after that. Uh,
Mm, no, I never did.
yeah,
I don't remember any of the coaches cussing or swearing personally. I might have been too tired to remember, but I don't.
I can remember Fuller ripping off a few, but they were not, you know, nowhere near the level of profanity that we hear now. I mean, even on, television, I've always been amazed that, when you and I were growing up, you never heard a profane word used, much less the GD word. That was like blasphemy. And now, of course, it's, and this, we're not trying to do a commentary on, language and profanity, but it was a shock to hear him say that. And the only other time I ever heard a coach during that time frame was when James Owens was throwing a ball back into play, and it accidentally hit Coach Cannon in the back of the head, and he wheeled around and he lit one off, and I don't even remember what the word was, but I remember Coach Lutz had kind of seen it from a distance. He thought somebody had intentionally hit him, because we were having a pretty rough day that day scrimmaging, and he was coaching the defense. And when that ball hit him in the back of the head, I'm sure it hurt, first of all. And secondly, he thought it was somebody threw it at him. And Coach Lutz had to jump in and say, "No, Coach, it was an accident. I saw it. It got loose from James Owens, who was on the team with us that year." And I don't know if that was our junior year, probably our sophomore year, that happened. But that's the only time I've ever heard.
Well, remember, James wasn't with us on our sophomore. Remember, James tried to come out and play football, but he was told by Coach Lutz that you had to participate in the summer workouts to be on the football team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
then
never
he
knew
came
that.
on as a junior.
I never knew that until you mentioned that to me several weeks ago or months ago, and I never was aware of that conversation.
James told me that at one of our gatherings that we had. He and I had gotten off at a table by ourselves, and I was getting him to tell me a lot of the things that had happened to him, and that was how he got started on the team, was that next year by coming to these Fairfield Park running drills.
But when you say that, though, I don't remember him being in school our sophomore year. So he must have stayed at the other school for that sophomore year of his, and then came to Fairfield High School in the junior year, which is when he played.
He could have, our sophomore year, there were just a handful of the students from the industrial school that did come down to Fairfield. Wasn't a lot of them. But I'm like you, I don't remember James being in that group. He could have been.
I don't either. But it was quite a night, and if you remember the aftermath of that, when we got back home, we're 0-7, and we were getting ready to play McAdory, I think, the next week. And we had 3 players, one of which was from our class, and 2 of the seniors that were dismissed from the squad. And so I think the one that was dismissed that was in our class was really more of a follower and not a leader. So he was kind of caught up in, being BMOC, with those other guys. And because of his hanging around and just his attitude about stuff, he got caught up in the backwash of those 2 getting kicked off the team, and so he was kicked off as well. And he had to beg his way back on the following year, and turned out to be a great player and a great leader. But when they got kicked off, it was like, I want to say it was either the day before or maybe even the day of the game that we played McAdory, because I can remember we used to go in the gym and lay on the wrestling mats and wait for, time to go warm up. and we'd be listening to the band warming up and the drum corps starting to warm up, and it was just a lot of excitement in the air. And they called a team meeting. I don't know if you remember that. They called a team meeting, and we went in that little classroom in the back side of the gym and told us that these three guys had been dismissed and would not be playing that night. And of course, my initial thoughts were just that night, but turns out it was for the balance of the season. And we beat McAdory. We beat, I want to say it was Mountain Brook, maybe. I'm not sure. I'd have to get a program out. We won the last three games, and so we wound up with a 3-7 season that year. And just to get closure, the next year when we were juniors, we had a fabulous team. We went 7-2, I believe. We lost to Jones Valley in a real fluke thing, a lot of people thought it was a bad call. It gave them a first down and enabled them to score. It was 6-0 when they scored, and they beat us 7-6. And then the following week, or maybe 2 weeks later, we played Hueytown for homecoming. And you know what? We wore those crazy purple jerseys. That's the only game we played that year. We wore those purple jerseys, and we lost. I remember Danny Bianchi kept falling down trying to cover, wide receivers, and they would catch the ball and go for touchdown. And I'm trying to remember the guy that was a quarterback at Hueytown played at Alabama. I want to say it was Steve Higginbotham. I'm not. Don't quote me on that. Remember. But we lost 2 and won 7, and then of course our senior year we were 9-0 when we went to the playoffs. And while we're talking about all this, I've always wondered, and I don't know who all knows this really, or perhaps has forgotten about it, but our senior year, when we were preparing to go to the first game of the state playoffs, we were going to play Sachs High School up there, and we scrimmaged harder those 2 weeks than we probably did at any time during the season. Do you remember that, Danny?
Yeah, I sure do.
And what happened? James Owens, our starting running back, defensive cornerback, high school All-American, was injured and couldn't play. Jimmy Nipper, our all-county, all-state quarterback, was injured, couldn't play. And poor little David White, who had been playing defensive back and had probably taken maybe 5 snaps in his whole life at the high school, played quarterback. And I think Wells might have played. George Wells could have played quarterback some too that night.
Yeah, I remember David White for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Wells, but I remember David was QB1, I think, when we went to play them. And of course they beat us 31-0 and sent us home with our tails between our legs. And 52, what was that, 60, 68? What is this, 47 years? I wasn't real good in math, and especially fractions, 7/5 of the time I never really get a good idea. Here, my buddy Mike McGinnis is telling us that, Steve Higginbotham was coach. Mike went to Hueytown, so he would know. He's an expert.
Okay.
Was the quarterback up at Hueytown. But anyway,
Mike then knew the turnip. Mike knows the Turnip Seed brothers. Triplets.
Yeah, the triplets.
Yeah.
They went to Inslee Baptist when I was going there. But anyway, my point was, you always wonder what might have happened if those two guys were healthy, because they were, let's face it, the core talent of that team. And most of us played both ways. And if I'm not mistaken, Danny, I think you're going to kill me for this. You were like
What?
20th in the league kicking field goals that year, weren't you?
That's right.
Yeah,
During the year, yeah,
yeah,
20th in the league in scoring.
yeah. That's an inside joke between
I sure
Danny and
wish I
I
had
because
that
I have
article.
never let him forget that I remember that. But uh,
Uh,
anyway, well, I guess what started off as a text message, I asked Danny to come on with me tonight and just reminisce a little bit about uh, those years. And I appreciate you guys that have left some comments. You feel free to continue if you'd like. Donna, thank you for watching, and Phil. You know, Phil and I played at Sanford University, but he played ball at Jess Lanier. It might have been Bessemer High School, I think, when we played them, though.
it was Bessemer High School then,
Yeah, Phil, if you're
and you
still
played in
online,
Smith
you can.
Snyder Stadium.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think somebody told me the other day that the old Bessemer Stadium. No, I take that back. It was the old Hueytown Stadium where they filmed part of the movie Woodlawn. Uh,
Oh, did they? Yeah.
and I talked about that last week. It's one of my favorite movies. But Phil, then of course, I think went to Alabama and then later transferred to Sanford University and was on our '71 team. We were Division II national champions, and Phil Phil was a great guy. He is a great guy, but he was also uh, a ladies' man. He probably dated everybody that was female at Sanford University when he was there, and I wonder if he's still online. He's not as able to defend himself, but I used
Yeah.
to laugh. And Phil, I'm sorry to tell this story, but I used to laugh. I was talking to a girl once, and I said something about Phil was dating some other girl, and she said, "Well, I wonder if they've gotten to the third date yet before Phil plays the guitar for him." And I said, "Is that his MO?" And she said, "Yeah. If you get to the third date with Phil, you're going to get serenaded with him on his guitar." Now, Phil, you can deny that or not. You're free to tell us the truth, but that was the story that I heard, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I remember it
I
that
would I
right
would
way.
recommend that you bring him on maybe next week.
No, there's no way. And believe it or not, Phil has been a great coach over the years, and he's still down in Baldwin County coaching. And Phil, I may get the name wrong, but it's Bayside Christian or
Academy.
Bayside Academy, one of the two,
Hmm.
and have always put great teams on the field and many trips to the playoffs under his guidance and leadership. Uh, he's a he's a he's a good guy, and he's a believer too. That's even more important. And Mike, I appreciate you watching. Mike's living up in Chattanooga now, and uh, I think of Mike often. He and I were young preacher boys at Sanford at the same time, and I'll tell this quick story. Mike and I used to go street preaching downtown Birmingham, and we would stand out on the corner and we'd pass out tracts and we'd preach and one night we were walking down Fourth Avenue north, headed down towards where all the music stores were, Forbes and Alabama Music and all those
Hmm.
places.
That's
And
yeah.
uh, anyway, he okay. So here we go. Phil says, "Not all of them." Amen. I guess he's talking about he didn't make it to the third date. I guess I don't know, but
Uh,
and Willie Bice, Willie, I always knew as Danny. I don't know when he picked up the Willie
yeah.
name, uh, but I see
When he got to
Willie.
Texas.
Well, he wears that hat, and I love that. But I just have different memories of Mr. Bice without a cowboy hat. And but anyway, to
Well, the
finish
main thing,
what?
yeah, I was gonna say the main thing about Willie, he was seriously ill earlier this year, and we're just glad that he's still hanging in there with us.
Absolutely. I hope you're doing better too, buddy. I know a lot of people have been praying for you, and but anyway, to finish my McGinnis story, we were down on Fourth Avenue, and we were walking down towards where Forbes Music was, and if you remember correctly, there was a stairway that went downstairs, and it went into the Cane Break, Bob Kane's
Mhm.
nightclub. And so we decided that night we were going to go down there and just kind of bypass the bouncer and pass out tracts at the table. Tell people about Jesus. That's what he told us to do, right? I mean, go and tell. And so we're passing out tracts, and I'm giving tracts to this table and this table, and I'm saying you need to read this. It wasn't a real hard pressure, but I guess when you're 6'6" and you weigh about 285, and somebody hands you a tract, you're probably going to take it, I guess. But anyway, no pressure. I'm handing out tracts, and I spin around to get the table behind me, and there sits Coach Hyde and Coach Grubb and one of our other, actually I think there were four of the Sanford coaches and their wives that were sitting at that table, having an adult beverage and enjoying the music. And I don't know who was more surprised, them or me, because I just never really even crossed my mind that a coach would be in a bar listening to music, and
Did you give him a track?
well, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I was already committed when I think had already handed it to him when I looked up and saw who it actually was, because it was a little dark in there. And the crazy thing about it was, uh, in my mind, there I was, a student at Sanford University, studying to go in the ministry. The slogan was, academic excellence in a Christian environment, and never crossed my mind that a coach would be in that situation. Just didn't register with me. And like I said, I think they're looking at me like, Ellison, what are you doing in here? Because I was probably 19, maybe 20. I'm not sure. Uh,
Well,
but
we
it
was
was.
we were still naive during that period of time.
Oh yeah, I was. I was. I'll admit I was. And I never felt like I was always sheltered. My dad was a deputy sheriff, and he used to tell me a lot of stories about his work. And he was a coroner for a while, and for a time he actually worked in juvenile court. And that was a tough time for me because he would come home, and I think he was seeing the worst of the worst in juvenile court, and get home to me, and it was like, hey, Dad, I'm clean, I'm okay. I'm not one of your juvies. But he had this slogan. He said, only trust a kid as far as you can see him sitting at the table with both hands on it, you know, and he was pretty strict about that. But anyway, Willie has come back and he said, I picked my first name after five other Dannies where I worked. It helped keep us apart. So, well, that makes perfect sense.
There you go.
There you go.
Yep.
So, anyway,
And
well,
Danny's
let's,
a veteran also.
yes, absolutely. Thank you for
Yep.
your service. Now, Danny, how long were you in the service there? Or let me
I was
rephrase. How
just
long were you
about 27
deployed?
and a half. Well, I wasn't deployed very long, approximately 2 months, just over 2 months. The rest of the unit, they had about 4 months. I came back in advance of the unit to help coordinate them getting back here to the States. But I ended up, as a career, I was there 27 years, 4 months, and 24 of that years I was full time.
Danny, while I got you online here, I want to ask you a couple of questions, okay? I love these little cards.
Mm-hmm.
It says if you had a theme song, is that going to focus or not? You don't want to. I'll read it to you. If you had a theme song, what would it be and why?
That would be hard to come off the top of my head.
This is completely unrehearsed, folks. Danny had no idea I was going to ask him that.
I'm more of a softer, mellower type songs that I like. I'm not into real heavy rock and roll.
I remember you being a big fan of the Four Tops in high school.
Yeah, well, that's mellow. Yeah, that's mellow music. Them, Temptations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the soundtrack of our life, buddy. All right, so here's another one for you. What's the hardest you've ever worked? Would you like to buy a vowel or
I would.
call it a lifeline or
I
something?
guess the first thing that comes to my mind is working at Buchanan Construction that summer after high school, and they were digging ditches for 9 cell conduit to run some cable through it for telephone lines, and I just wasn't prepared for moving and lift. They didn't have a machine to lift that heavy conduit. You had to pick it up and get it off the truck and then put it back in the hole when they were ready to use it. So I would call that for me the hardest I remember. Then football practice falls somewhere in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, compare that to your experience in was it Desert Storm or Desert what was the other desert thing?
Yeah, well, it was Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
Yeah.
Uh, that was a lot of mentally draining and tight during that time. You know, I worked as a coordinator a lot of the activities that when you're trying to put 400 person unit on active duty and it's a 400 bed hospital and you're having to get your equipment is stored in Burtonwood, England, and you're having to arrange to get that shipped to Dammam, Saudi Arabia. You're also having to get your equipment driven down to the port of Jacksonville and loaded onto a ship there and getting it to meet up with all of your equipment that you had sent from the hospital and in Dammam. So that and just doing all the personnel actions that are needed to get people on active duty.
Well, and tell
Pretty
people
time
and
consuming. There's a lot that goes on.
if I recall, the unit you were in was the 109 Med Evac out of Birmingham Airport area there,
And
right?
yeah, 109th Back Hospital. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, you know,
We had
go ahead.
we had about 130, 40 females, uh, about 10 or 12 doctors, physicians, probably about 30 or 40 nurses. So we were carrying a crew of people that had a lot of knowledge in the medical field, and we had to be filled from people from the regular army because we didn't have all the specialties that we needed. So people from the regular army were sent to us at Fort Benning to backfill.
Now, when you were there though, and of course, I don't know if I've told this story or not on the podcast, but you and I were sitting with one another in 1968 when they pulled the lottery numbers, and you were like 69 if I remember, and I was laughing at you, and I
Yeah, I
got
was.
68. Uh, and so we had this bright idea of going down and signing up for the guard at the airport. And I don't say it was the next day, but it might have been. It was within a week. You and I went down and filled out the paperwork, and we got it all done, and we took and we turned it in, and we asked the guy, say, okay, when do we get our uniform? And the guy looks at us like, well, you don't understand. There's about 3,000 people in front of you on a waiting list. And of course, this was in the height of Vietnam,
Yeah,
and we were trying not to
yeah.
be there. Uh, and then next thing I know, I think you managed to get in somehow or another. Maybe it's not what you know, but who you know. I don't know. Uh,
It was my mother who she knew. Yeah, she knew General Persons, who was one of the uppity ups at First National Bank. They even had named a branch after him that was in downtown Birmingham. And he had called somebody, and the next thing I knew, I'm getting a call from Montgomery telling me to come down and talk with him.
and so, just to complete the circle here, you served as in the guard unit for how many years prior to going full time guard?
I was in the Guard as a part timer for about 3 years before I went full time.
And then you served full time in the
So
guard.
71 to 74, I was part time, and in 74 became full time.
And then how long did you stay full time in the guard?
That was till when I got out, 98. Yeah, 98, middle of
So
98.
what is that? About 25 years, maybe? Is it that long?
24, 20, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
hmm
And then during that latter part, though, you were deployed to Desert X, we'll call it. What'd you say?
That was 90 and 91
Yeah.
that we were deployed overseas.
Yeah.
And then we're back in the States doing our normal missions and all.
Let me say this. I've admired you for what you've done, and I thank you for your service. Um, but I always thought it was ironic that you and I were trying to stay out of the military, and you wound up making a career out of it, and wound up being deployed to the Middle East. There for that time frame, and
Yeah, it was enjoyable. I got to where I liked it. And when I eventually got out, it had gotten to where it wasn't fun anymore. Believe it or not, it was more of a hassle. And fortunately, I was able to get a job with the federal court
in Birmingham.
in Birmingham. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I don't know how long we've been going here.
I'm sure you and I are the only two on. So
Well, we got a few hanger-oners here. Willie said that he signed up 3 years ago. I'm assuming that's referring to the guard when we were talking about that. I think that's what that was.
I don't know what that would be unless maybe he signed up for 3 years active. I don't know.
And I think
Back in the day.
I asked you the question about the hardest job you've ever done, and Willie replied. He said, "A brick mason helper." Yeah, I can see that.
hmm
And mixing
Yeah.
cement, he says. And then Lazenby comes back on
Yep.
and says, "My Fairfield teammates were great players and men, even Nipper." Yeah, that's a little bit of an inside joke because Nipper.
Well, I'm beginning. Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder about Phil.
Yeah, well, the Jimmy Nipper, Mike Thrasher, Steve Stewart all went to Sanford same year. I came in the following spring from Chattanooga. So there were actually four former Fairfield players from the same team that were there when Phil was making reference. And of course, Nipper is somewhere in Thailand, I think now. I've been telling people, they asked me where Jimmy is, and I said, I think he's in witness protection. I'm not sure, but I don't.
He could be with John Garrett.
I'm not sure anybody's going to understand that, but you or I, Willie might. But John
Yeah.
Garrett. John Garrett. Is he still around? Is he still alive? I'm trying.
Well, he was for some of our get-togethers at reunions or something. I remember. I think eating at a Cracker Barrel down on 280 with him and some others several years ago.
I really have a hard time remembering uh, sometimes who has passed and who hasn't. And somebody will call a name, and I'll say, "Are they still alive?" I'm not sure. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just don't remember. Uh, so
Hmm. Hmm.
anyway. Well, listen, those of you who are still watching, thank you, and thanks for the comments, guys. It's always good to know that somebody's watching all this. And uh, Danny, I really do appreciate you coming on. This is something that I've been wanting to do since I started the podcast, of having some guests come on with me and converse and just have a conversation about things Fairfield, things Sanford, things that have occurred in our lives. And I guess you're the maiden voyage, if that's the right way of referring to it, of my having a guest on board. And I hope you'll give our.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and I have seen some of your podcasts. I haven't seen them all, but I have seen them, and they do jog back memories of things that we've seen and done, and then I'm learning some new things that happened to you.
Yeah, well, uh, I don't know how long I'm going to do it. I was telling you the other night that I'm running out of stories. There's only so many truthful things you can embellish over a period of time, but uh, you're
I mean, we still have a few.
well, probably, but not all of them are public domain, you know. So uh,
They're not that bad.
yeah, that's relatively speaking. Not now, maybe it was then, but uh, and I don't even know what you're referring to. I just know where my mind goes when you mention things like that. But nevertheless,
Well, a lot of people a lot of people don't know that you had a thing that you enjoyed doing in high school, and that was photography.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going to go there. You gonna tell them the story? You want me to?
I think we need to save it.
All right. I will say this though. You know, the little intro video, I make reference to being close to being suspended 3 weeks from graduation, and that is true. But it's not as bad as it sounds, because if you remember, Ms. Sexton had what they called a mock court in her senior class, and
Yeah.
we were all assigned different roles, and I was the defense attorney for my class, and Ronnie Albright was the defense attorney in his class, and so they were having the mock court during the day when those classes typically would have met over at the auditorium, and uh,
Hmm.
in saying all that, uh, uh, quick, oh gosh, I'm going to interrupt myself here. Kyle Hewlett says, like wrestling Hannah at Chattanooga. It wasn't Hannah, Kyle. It was Jim Croft. They both wrestled alternated nights, and I happened to pull Croft, who was a 4-time prep All-American in wrestling and in football, and was a All-American in university in wrestling and in football. And I got lucky. But then again, had I not pulled him, I would have been wrestling John Hanna, who wasn't a bad player himself. Probably named the greatest
Nope.
offensive lineman in NFL history. But it was a weird night. And then Phil says, be sure and tell your guests, speaking of you, Danny, that thank you for your service. and your efforts there
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I appreciate
in the
that.
guard.
Tommy has spoken a lot of times when he tells me his things that he did at Sanford and people he knew. Your name comes up often.
Well, Dan, Phil was what I call a West End boy, not West End High School, but just grew up in the west side of Birmingham, and there was a lot of special people that came from the west side that have done well for themselves, and were just good people, good people. But anyway, back to my story. I was doing mock court, and uh, I had already done our session where I was uh, defense attorney. I'm getting a little feedback here. I don't know if you can hear it or not. Uh, and
No.
I wanted to hear what Ronnie was doing. And so I cut English with Miss Osborne and went to the mock trial during that period to hear Ronnie and his presentation. And by the time the day was over with, I'd been called to the office, and apparently when she called roll, she immediately reported me as being MIA. And I don't know how she knew that I was even in school that day. I didn't think they did records like that back then. But nevertheless, she had her own mental tracker on me, and I was brought in and told that I could be suspended for cutting class. Imagine that, cutting a class back then was, punished for by suspension. And like I said, it was about 3 weeks away from graduate. And I remember going to her house there in Bellevue Heights and ringing her doorbell. And I don't know what she thought I was going to do when I got there. She might have thought I was going to threaten her. I don't know. But I begged her to let me back in school and to give me, a moment's grace to come back and be able to graduate. And she agreed. I think I had to write a paper on Beowulf or something, Canterbury Tales. But that was the episode that I referenced in that intro video. So anyway, all right, my friend. Listen, thank you all you guys that have come in. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if any of you are interested in coming online with me some night and we talk about Fairfield stuff or Sanford stuff or just life in general, would love to have you. And I'll have to vet you, though, because Danny's already taught me you can't bring up every subject. And I still haven't touched on that photography story yet, have I, Danny? So anyway,
No.
it's not anything to do with art photography. Never mind. So I'll leave you hanging on that one. So
we were paparazzi type.
Yeah. Before we knew what paparazzi was, I guess.
Well, that's right. Before we knew the word.
Yeah. So anyway, folks, we appreciate you and love you all. And I hope you guys have a great week. And we'll be back next Sunday, live at 5 for Senior Moments. And I'm going to play a little video here. You be sure and listen to this guy so he's going to give you some instructions. And he's a good guy. He's very handsome, by the way, and humble, very humble. Yeah. So again, Danny, thanks for your time and your efforts tonight. And I appreciate you doing this with me. So you guys have a great week.
You.
Take care. Well, hey, thanks for spending a few minutes with me on Senior Moments. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure and tap that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. I'll be back soon with more stories from a misspent youth, and maybe some of yours too.